You've probably seen those signs in national parks that say, "Leave only footprints, take only memories." Well, when you leave here, I hope you take more than memories. Hope you take a skill, the skill of training your mind, like we're doing right now, focusing on the breath, being mindful to stay with the breath, being alert to the breath, and developing a quality that's called ardency. Once you see the disadvantages of having an untrained mind, so you get earnest and active in doing your best to train it. So part of the skill, of course, is knowing how to do it, and the other part is learning how to motivate yourself to keep doing it. Here the environment helps. We've got a very quiet place, very few responsibilities. Everybody else is meditating, so it's easy to sit down and meditate with them. When you go home, the environment is not going to be that conducive, but you have to think about the environment in two ways, or there are two kinds of environment. There's the outside environment, and there's the environment that you create yourself. Because it's not that we're totally victim of situations around us. Our actions and our attitudes also create an environment. So you have to develop the right attitudes. And remember that there are going to be parts of the mind that are not going to go along, especially if this is a new habit you're trying to develop. You sit down for a few minutes and all you see is what a mess your mind is. And then you can think about, there's something else I should be doing right now. Ajahn Fuang used to call those Deva Maras. Mara, of course, is the symbol of temptation. And Deva is a higher being. They're higher than human beings. And these higher beings tell you, oh, you should be doing this. They're telling you good things to do. Go fix some food, go arrange this, go clean that up. These are all good things to do in their proper time and place. But you have to have at least one part of the day where you tell yourself, okay, this is for the mind. Because all the good things in life, the good things in the world come from the mind. And the mind needs to be trained. Otherwise its greed, aversion, and delusion and ignorance will just take over. And all those other members of the committee. And you notice that not all the members of the committee are adults. We do have some children. And the Buddhist attitude is not that you pamper your inner child. Although as one psychologist friend of mine once said, the only people in the world who have the right to talk about the inner child are pregnant women. But we do have some very childish members of the committee. They complain, they whine, they squirm. They don't like sitting down here. They want to do something else, and they'll come up with some nice thing for you to do, so you don't feel bad about quitting the meditation. But an important part of the meditation is learning how to sit with the mind regardless of what shape it's in, so you can understand it. So when there's greed in the mind, you understand the greed. When there's anger, you understand the anger. And Ajahn Suwat said that when he first went to stay with Ajahn Mun, his mind was a mess, and he was embarrassed to talk to Ajahn Mun about his meditation because there wasn't much to talk about. But one day Ajahn Mun asked him how his meditation was going. And so very truthfully he said, I just sit there and my mind seems to be distracted all the time. And Ajahn Mun gave him some encouragement. He says, well, the fact that you know it's distracted is a step up. It comes in the Satipatthana Sutta, and knowing the distracted mind as a distracted mind is an important part of the meditation. Now Ajahn Suwat was wise enough to realize that Ajahn Mun wasn't saying, well, that's good enough, just stay right there. He realized he wanted his mind to be undistracted. But at the same time, he's giving encouragement. Everybody has to go through these stages where the mind is just all over the place. It's not like just one inner child. You've got your whole inner classroom in there. And so you have to remind yourself of the ways that you've dealt with children in the past. Sometimes you have to humor them, other times you have to be strict with them. And when you set tasks for them, you have to figure out what their capabilities are. Don't think that when you go back you're going to have to sit for an hour every day and then you find yourself not being able to do it at all. Give yourself an amount of time that you can manage. You know you can manage. Even if it's just 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's not too much. And then experiment to see which time of day is the most congenial time of day for you to meditate. For some people it's in the evening, other people it's in the morning. For other people it's right after work. For some people it's during a break during the work. So experiment. See what time is best for your time. And the voices that come up that try to stop you, you've got to learn how to counteract them. If you're complaining that you're doing this because someone else, i.e. I, told you to do this, remind yourself you're doing it for yourself. Your mind needs training. You're going to be better off with a trained mind. After all, as the Buddha said, it's a trained mind that brings happiness. Because you can have everything else in the world going really well for you, but if your mind is a mess, you can create all sorts of suffering. In fact, people with untrained minds but who gain wealth, who gain power, those are the ones who create all the problems in the world, the big problems. So remind yourself of how important it is and how much you will benefit from your meditation. If at other times you're saying, oh, I'm being selfish, I should be using this time for other people, remind yourself other people do benefit from the fact that you're sitting there quietly, gaining some control over your greed, aversion, delusion. So whatever the complaint comes up, have something to counter it. Don't just give in. Because training the mind really is important. Your mind is your most important possession. And if you don't look after it, what will you look after? We brush our teeth every day, we bathe every day, feed ourselves every day. These are things we do to look after the body. We should give at least some time to the mind. And don't complain that you have no time at all. There's got to be some time in the course of the day. Of course, that you have to want it enough to make the time, but it is possible to make the time. This is where you have to learn to use your ingenuity, both in making the time and in making yourself want to make the time. As the Buddha said, a real test of your discernment is seeing where there are things you like to do that are going to give trouble, and learning how to talk yourself out of them. Then there are things you don't like to do, but you know are going to be good for you, like meditating every day. And so you have to ask yourself, well, why do you not like it? Are you just sitting here breathing? And if the breath is uncomfortable, you've got permission to make it comfortable. Experiment. Learn to gain some control. Learn to gain some familiarity with your own breathing. Because this is going to be with you all the way to the end. And if you can gain some sense of how to make the breath more comfortable, it makes everything a lot easier. You have better associations with the meditation, so it's something you remember that you do like to do it. It's a comfortable time. Even if your mind is wandering off, every time you come back to the breath, make it comfortable. So you have some pleasant associations. And get to the point where you realize that if it's been 10 minutes or 15 minutes that you've allotted to yourself, that's not quite enough. Okay, then you can add as much time as you like. But it's like building up an exercise routine. If you really push yourself, okay, you can do yourself some damage. In this case, the damage would be developing a unfriendly attitude towards the meditation. So learn how to pace yourself. How much are you capable of? And when does the time come to stretch yourself a little bit more, a little bit more? It's not all that difficult. The important thing is making sure your motivation is in the right place, that you benefit, the people around you are going to benefit, and what else you're going to hold on to in your life as having real value. That's more important than the mind. Even your body is going to leave you at some point. All your relationships with people around you, all your responsibilities, you're going to have to drop them at some point. And you can't wait for the work of the world to be finished and then meditate. The work of the world is never finished. There's always more to be done, more to be done. And reminding yourself of that you need this time, to take this time in the midst of these unfinished jobs. At the very least, to put your mind in good shape. If you want to listen to a Dharma talk while you meditate, that's perfectly fine. So you don't feel you're so alone. But you don't have to give your full attention to the Dharma talk. In fact, the more attention you give to the breath, the better. This way you learn how to deal with all those inner children. And the whole point of dealing with your inner children is you don't leave them as inner children, you help them grow up. Meditation is something that grown-ups do. It's also something that children do. So they become grown-ups, responsible grown-ups, happy grown-ups. So when you set your list of priorities for the day, remember that meditation has to come up. If not number one, at least number two. There was a general in the army I read about one time. She would make a list every day of the things that needed to be done, and she'd rank them in order of priority. And then from number 3 on down, she'd cross them out. Work on number 1, number 2. Top priority. If the mind isn't your top priority, it's got to be right next to it. Because the mind is what makes all the other decisions. Even when the strength of the body is low, if the strength of the mind is good, you'll be able to figure out the right thing to do, and you'll have the strength to do it. This is your most important tool, so take really good care of it. Don't leave it just lying around.